The pool was gone. 3 weeks of backbreaking labor, $6,000 in removal costs, and a yard that looked like a construction site, all because Karen Mitchell had made his life hell for 2 years. But when Marcus heard the gate slam and saw her standing there in her designer swimsuit, clutching a pink flamingo, Floatie like some deranged pool party crasher, he knew the real war was just beginning. She'd pushed him too far, threatened his family one too many times, and now she was about to discover that some neighbors don't just get mad, they get even. What Karen didn't know was that Marcus had been planning this moment for months, and her precious reputation was Marcus Rivera wiped the sweat from his forehead as he surveyed the demolished remains of what had once been his backyard oasis. The concrete chunks lay scattered like broken teeth across the muddy crater where his pool had been just 48 hours ago. 3 years of mortgage payments to afford this dream, 2 years of Karen Mitchell's relentless harassment, and now nothing but a gaping wound in the earth. The demolition crew had finished yesterday, their industrial equipment leaving tire tracks that carved through his once pristine lawn like scars. The HOA-approved safety fence around the excavation site fluttered in the morning breeze, yellow caution tape snapping like tiny flags of surrender. "Daddy, why did you break our pool?" Marcus turned to find his 8-year-old daughter Sophia standing in the sliding glass doorway, her Spider-Man pajamas wrinkled from sleep. Her dark eyes, so much like her mother's, held the kind of confusion that broke his heart daily. "I didn't break it," Mia Marcus said, crouching to her level. "Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices. But I loved swimming." Sophia's lower lip trembled, and Mama loved floating on her rainbow raft. The mention of Alina hit like a physical blow. Marcus's wife had been gone 6 months, taking her as relentlessly as Karen had taken his peace of mind. The pool had been Elena's sanctuary during her final summer, the place where she'd found moments of weightless relief from the pain. "I know, baby, I know." Marcus pulled Sophia close, breathing in her shampoo scent. "But maybe we can find new ways to have fun, okay?" Sophia nodded against his shoulder, but Marcus could feel her disappointment. Just another promise broken, another piece of their old life stripped away. The sound of a car door slamming made Marcus look up. Across the street, Karen Mitchell emerged from her pristine white Mercedes SUV like a queen stepping from her carriage. Even at 9 in the morning, she was fully armored designer athleisure, perfect blonde highlights, and that expression of perpetual disgust she reserved for everyone who dared share her zip code. Marcus had moved to Willow Creek Estates 2 years ago, drawn by the promise of good schools and quiet suburban life. The neighborhood was a developer's dream, identical colonial houses with manicured lawns, an HOA that regulated everything from mailbox colors to the acceptable height of rose bushes. It should have been paradise. Instead, it had become his personal hell, thanks to the woman now marching across his driveway like she owned it. "Sophia, go inside and get ready for school," Marcus said, gently steering his daughter toward the house. "But Daddy now, please." Sophia disappeared into the house just as Karen reached the edge of the excavation site. She stood there for a moment, hands on her hips, surveying the destruction with the air of a general inspecting a battlefield. "Well," Karen said, her voice carrying that particular tone that suggested she was speaking to something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe, "I have to say, Marcus, this is quite the improvement." Marcus forced himself to stay calm. 2 years of Karen's complaints, threats, and HOA violations had taught him that engaging with her directly only made things worse. She'd reported him for everything from leaving his garbage cans out too long to hosting Sophia's birthday party without proper permits. She'd called child services twice, claiming he was an unfit single parent. She'd even tried to have his contractor's license revoked by filing false complaints with the state board. "Morning, Karen," Marcus said evenly. "Shouldn't you be getting ready for your yoga class?" Karen's smile was razor-sharp. "Oh, I had to cancel. This was much more important." She gestured toward the crater. "I wanted to personally thank you for finally doing something about that eyesore." The pool was hardly an eyesore. Please, that thing was a liability waiting to happen. Not to mention the noise, all that splashing and laughing at all hours. Some of us value peace and quiet. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Alina had barely been able to whisper by the end, let alone splash loudly. Sophia's laughter had been the only sound that made their house feel alive during those final months. The pool was well maintained and properly fenced, Marcus said. It violated zero HOA regulations. Regulations change. Karen's smile widened. As you well know, the board just voted to ban all in-ground pools in the neighborhood. Safety concerns, property values, insurance liability, the usual issues. The words hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. What are you talking about? Didn't you get the letter? Oh, that's right. You missed the last 3 board meetings. Understandable, given your ... circumstances. Karen's tone dripped false sympathy. The new regulations go into effect next month. Any existing pools must be removed or filled in within 60 days. Marcus stared at her. You're lying, am I? Karen pulled out her phone and scrolled through her emails. Here we go. Motion 2024-15, Prohibition of In-Ground Swimming Pools. Passed by emergency vote on October 15, 2024. Effective November 1st, 2024. She looked up triumphantly. You demolished just in time. The ground seemed to shift beneath Marcus's feet. You can't just change the rules retroactively. We can when it's a matter of community safety. Your pool was the only one left in the neighborhood, Marcus, a clear and present danger to property values and resident well-being. That's impossible. The Johnsons have a pool. The Hendersons had pools. Past tense. Karen's voice was sing-song now, savoring each word. Amazing how quickly people comply when they understand the consequences of non-compliance. Marcus felt the world tilting. He'd spent his life savings having the pool removed, thinking he was making a strategic retreat. Instead, he'd walked directly into Karen's trap. You planned this, he said quietly. I planned nothing. I simply advocated for responsible community standards. Karen examined her manicured nails, though I have to admit, I'm impressed by your proactive approach. Most people would have fought the regulation, forced us to impose fines, maybe even pursue legal action. But you saw the writing on the wall. I removed the pool because of Alina. The words came out before Marcus could stop them. Karen's expression shifted, her mask of false civility slipping for just a moment. Yes. Well, that's very ... touching. She recovered quickly. I'm sure she would have wanted you to be a responsible neighbor. The casual cruelty of it choosing Elena's memory as a weapon sent white-hot rage through Marcus's chest. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Don't, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare talk about my wife. Karen took a step back, but her smile returned. Oh, Marcus, are you threatening me? Because that would be very unwise. The HOA takes aggressive behavior very seriously. I'm not threatening anyone, good, because you wouldn't want to give me another reason to call the police or child services. Sophia's, such a sweet girlet, would be terrible if something happened to disrupt her stable home environment. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Marcus felt his vision narrow, his breathing shallow. Karen had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. You stay away from my daughter, Marcus said. I don't have to stay away from anyone. This is my neighborhood too. I'm just a concerned neighbor looking out for everyone's best interests. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Marcus, you might want to think about getting that crater filled in soon. The HOA has very strict regulations about landscaping maintenance. It would be a shame if you had to pay additional fines. Karen walked away, her heels clicking on the asphalt like a countdown timer. Marcus watched her go, his heart hammering against his ribs. 2 years of harassment, 2 years of playing by her rules, 2 years of taking the high road, and she'd still found a way to destroy everything he'd worked for. He pulled out his phone and dialed his contractor. Joe, it's Marcus Rivera. I need you to come take a look at something. What's up, man? I thought we were done with your place. Not quite. I need you to tell me exactly what it would take to build a pool. There was a pause. Marcus, didn't you just spend $6,000 having us tier one out? I did. Now I want to know what it would cost to put one back in. Are you serious? Marcus looked at the crater in his backyard, then at Karen's house across the street. The woman who'd made his life hell for 2 years, who'd threatened his daughter, who'd used his wife's memory as a weapon. Dead serious, Marcus said. And Joe, this time, I want to make sure it's absolutely perfect. As he hung up, Marcus felt something shift inside him. The grief was still there, the exhaustion, the weight of single parenthood, but underneath it all, something else was stirring, something he hadn't felt since Elena's diagnosis. purpose. Karen Mitchell had spent 2 years teaching him that. 3 days later, Marcus sat in the sterile conference room of Patterson and Associates, watching his lawyer, David Patterson, flip through a stack of documents that had grown thicker than a phone book. The HOA bylaws, deed restrictions, municipal codes, and state regulations spread across the mahogany table like battle plans. This is ... David paused, running his hand through his graying hair. This is either brilliant or completely insane. Which one? Marcus asked. Both. David looked up from the papers. Marcus, what you're proposing, it's technically legal. All of it. But the amount of red tape, the permits, the inspections, ... He gestured at the mountain of paperwork. You're talking about 6 months minimum, maybe a year. I have time and money because this won't be cheap. Marcus had already liquidated Elena's life insurance policy, cashed out his 401k, and taken a second mortgage on the house. The numbers were staggering, but he'd run them a dozen times. He could afford it barely. I'll manage, Marcus said. The question is whether it's airtight. David leaned back in his chair. Oh, it's airtight. That's what worries me. You're essentially weaponizing the entire regulatory system. The HOA can't stop you because everything falls under municipal jurisdiction. The city can't stop you because it's all within your property lines. The state can't stop you because you're following federal accessibility guidelines. But you're going to make a lot of enemies. Starting with Karen Mitchell, Marcus felt a grim smile tug at his lips. That's the point. The plan had come to him during Sophia's bedtime story 3 nights ago. She'd been reading about castles and moats, asking why the knights always built their fortresses so high. For protection, Marcus had explained, and to send a message. That's when it hit him. Karen had spent 2 years using the system against him, filing complaints, manipulating regulations, weaponizing the HOA. She'd turned his own compliance against him, making his desire to be a good neighbor into a weakness. But what if he stopped trying to be good? What if he followed every rule so perfectly, so completely, that the system itself became his weapon? Walk me through it one more time, David said. From the beginning. Marcus pulled out his own folder, filled with blueprints and technical specifications. Phase 1. I apply for a permit to install an in-ground swimming pool, which the HOA will fight. Which the HOA can't fight because I'm not actually building a pool. I'm building a therapeutic hydrotherapy facility for disabled individuals, which is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. David nodded slowly. And since you're applying for federal disability status due to your chronic back injury from the construction accident, ... double quotes, the city has to approve it. Federal law trumps local ordinances. Marcus had been putting off the disability paperwork for months, unwilling to admit that his fall from the scaffolding 2 years ago had left him with permanent nerve damage. His pride had kept him working through the pain, hiding the limp, pretending he was still the same man who'd built half the custom homes in the county. But pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. Phase 2, Marcus continued, I apply for a permit to install a pool house, which is actually a federally mandated accessibility support structure, changing facilities, emergency medical equipment storage, and a consultation office for my new business. David raised an eyebrow. Business. Rivera Therapeutic Services. I'm becoming a licensed hydrotherapy consultant. Marcus pulled out another stack of papers. I've already applied for the certification. Online course, 200 hours of study, completely legitimate. And the HOA can't object to a home-based business because ... because it's medical therapy for disabled individuals. Any attempt to restrict it would be discrimination under federal law. David was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents. Phase 3. I apply for a permit to install a privacy fence. Height restrictions. Don't apply when the fence is necessary for patient privacy during medical treatment. 8 feet, solid wood, completely blocking any view from Karen's house. Phase 4. Marcus's smile widened. I apply for a permit to install security lighting. Let me guess, not just any lighting? High-intensity LED arrays necessary for evening therapy sessions and medical emergency response. Motion-activated, professionally installed, code-compliant. David whistled low. Those things are bright enough to light a football stadium, and they face directly toward any property line where privacy violations might occur, which would be Karen's master bedroom window. Her backyard, her precious rose garden where she likes to spy on the neighbors. David set down the papers. Marcus, this is elaborate revenge. You understand that, right? It's not revenge, it's compliance. Marcus's voice was steady. Every single thing I'm doing is legal, properly permitted, and serves a legitimate purpose. I'm starting a business to help disabled individuals. I'm installing safety equipment to protect my patients. I'm ensuring privacy for medical treatments. And if Karen Mitchell happens to be driven insane by the noise, the lights, and the complete destruction of her property values, that's an unfortunate side effect of my legal business operations. David leaned forward. What about Sophia? Have you thought about how this affects her? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on his war with Karen, he'd barely considered how his daughter would handle the chaos. Sophia loves swimming, Marcus said quietly. She misses the pool every day. At least this way, she gets it back. Along with strangers in your backyard, construction crews, and a neighborhood war, Marcus thought about Sophia's confused tears. When she'd asked why he'd broken their pool, about the nightmares she'd been having since Elena died, about the way she flinched every time Karen's voice carried across the street, she's already living in a war zone, Marcus said. At least this way, I'm fighting back. David gathered the papers into neat stacks. I need 24 hours, too. Review everything with the regulatory team. But Marcus, once we file these permits, there's no going back. Karen will figure out what you're doing, and she'll fight dirty. She's already fighting dirty. No, she's been playing games. This will be actual war. Marcus stood, extending his hand. Then we'd better make sure we win. After leaving the lawyer's office, Marcus drove to Sophia's school to pick her up early. He'd scheduled a meeting with her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, to discuss Sophia's recent behavior changes. She's been withdrawn, Mrs. Rodriguez explained as they sat in the small plastic chairs designed for 8-year-olds. Her grades are still excellent, but she's not participating in group activities. And yesterday, she got into an argument with another student about fairness. What kind of argument? The other children were playing a game where they made up rules as they went along. Sophia got upset and said, "That wasn't fair, that you can't change the rules in the middle of the game to make someone lose." Marcus felt his chest tighten. What did you tell her? I told her she was right. But, Marcus, I'm concerned. Sophia is processing some very adult concepts about justice and fairness. Has something happened at home? Marcus looked through the classroom window at the playground, where Sophia was sitting alone on a swing, pumping her legs listlessly, having some neighbor issues, the kind that require legal intervention. Marcus met Mrs. Rodriguez's knowing gaze. Sophia's teacher had been in the neighborhood for 15 years. She'd seen the pattern before, possibly. I want you to know that whatever you're planning, Sophia is watching. She's learning from how you handle this situation. 8. Understand more than we give them credit for. I know. Do you? Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward. Because if you're about to turn your neighborhood into a battlefield, Sophia is going to be caught in the crossfire, and she's already lost her mother. She can't afford to lose her father, too. The words stung because they were true. Marcus had been so focused on his own anger, his own need for justice, that he'd forgotten the most important thing. Sophia needed stability, not revenge. What would you do? Marcus asked. If someone was systematically destroying your family, using the system against you, threatening your child. Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. I'd want to fight back, but I'd also remember that the best way to protect my child isn't always the most satisfying way. Marcus watched Sophia through the window. She'd gotten off the swing and was now sitting in the sandbox, methodically building something with intense concentration. Even from a distance, he could see the careful precision of her work, the same focused determination he'd seen in Elena. During her treatment, the same stubborn perfectionism he recognized in himself. What if fighting back was also the right thing to do? Marcus asked. What if showing her that you don't have to be a victim, that you can use the system to protect yourself instead of just enduring it? What if that was the better lesson? Mrs. Rodriguez considered this. Then you'd better make sure you win, because if you don't, Sophia will learn that fighting back just makes things worse. That evening, Marcus sat on Sophia's bed as she showed him her latest art project detailed, drawing of their backyard, complete with a sparkling blue pool and tiny stick figures of their family. "In my picture, Mama is still here," Sophia said, pointing to a figure with long dark hair floating on a rainbow raft. "And our pool is still here, and we're all, ha!" The first excavator arrived at 7 a.m. sharp on a Tuesday morning, its diesel engine rumbling like a mechanical beast as it maneuvered into Marcus's driveway. The operator, a weathered man named Tommy who'd worked construction for 30 years, climbed down from the cab with a grin that suggested he'd been looking forward to this job. "You sure about this, boss?" Tommy asked, surveying the quiet suburban street. "Looks like the kind of neighborhood where folks call the cops if you sneeze too loud." Marcus handed him a steaming cup of coffee and a thick folder. "Everything's permitted and approved. Federal priority status, expedited through the Americans with Disabilities Act. Anyone who complains can take it up with the Justice Department." Tommy whistled as he flipped through the permits. "Therapeutic hydrotherapy facility. Huh, that's fancy talk for a pool. It's a medical treatment facility that happens to involve water," Marcus corrected. "Completely different legal classification." "If you say so." Tommy drained his coffee and headed back to the excavator. "Either way, it's going to be loud." Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's what I'm counting on." The excavator's hydraulic arm bit into the earth with a sound like tearing fabric. The carefully maintained suburban quiet shattered as the machine began carving through soil, its engine echoing off the identical colonial houses like a mechanical battle cry. Marcus had positioned himself strategically on his front porch, laptop open, ostensibly reviewing his hydrotherapy certification materials while actually watching the windows of Karen's house. He didn't have to wait long. At 7:17 a.m., front door exploded open. She stormed out in her silk robe and designer slippers, her perfectly styled hair somewhat less than perfect, her face twisted with the kind of rage that comes from being woken up by heavy machinery. "What the hell is going on?" she shrieked across the street, her voice barely audible over the excavator's rumble. Marcus looked up from his laptop with practiced innocence. "Good morning, Karen. Beautiful day for construction, isn't it?" "Construction." Karen marched across the street, her slippers slapping against the asphalt. "You cannot be serious. It's 7 in the morning. City noise ordinance allows construction to begin at 7 a.m., Marcus said, not looking up from his screen. "All properly permitted activities, of course." Karen's face went through several interesting color changes. "You tore out your pool 3 weeks ago." "I did. Now I'm installing a therapeutic hydrotherapy facility." Marcus held up a laminated certificate. "I'm a licensed hydrotherapy consultant now, specialized in treating chronic pain and mobility issues." "That's just a fancy word for pool." "Actually, it's a fancy word for medical treatment facility. Completely different zoning classification." Marcus finally looked up, his expression sympathetic. "I'm sure you understand the importance of helping disabled individuals access necessary medical care." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You're not disabled." Marcus stood slowly, allowing his carefully hidden limp to show. The back injury from his construction accident had left him with permanent nerve damage, something he'd been hiding for 2 years out of pride. Now it was a weapon. "Chronic degenerative disc disease with associated nerve compression," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of medical authority, documented by Dr. Patterson at the Spine Center. "Federal disability status approved." "Last week? You're lying." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the official documentation. "Would you like me to call the ADA compliance office? I'm sure they'd be interested to hear about a neighbor harassing a disabled individual trying to access medical treatment." Karen's face went pale. Even she wasn't stupid enough to pick a fight with federal disability law. "This is harassment," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. "This is medical treatment," Marcus replied. "Perhaps you should speak with your lawyer about the legal implications of interfering with ADA-protected activities." Karen opened her mouth to respond, but the excavator's engine suddenly roared louder as Tommy began widening the excavation. The sound was overwhelming, making conversation impossible. Marcus smiled and pointed to his ears, shrugging apologetically. Karen spun on her heel and stalked back to her house, her robe billowing behind her like a battle flag. By 8:30 a.m., 3 more neighbors had emerged from their houses to investigate the commotion. The Hendersons from next door, the Johnsons from down the street, and old Mr. Petrov from the corner house Saul drawn by the mechanical symphony echoing through their quiet subdivision. Marcus called Jim Henderson, jogging over in his business suit. "What's going on? I thought you removed your pool." "I did. Now I'm installing a therapeutic hydrotherapy facility for my new business." Business. Marcus handed him a professionally printed brochure, Rivera Therapeutic Services. Specialized hydrotherapy for individuals with chronic pain and mobility issues. "I'm offering a 10% discount for neighborhood residents." Jim studied the brochure with growing amazement. "This is comprehensive. I believe in doing things right." Marcus gestured toward the excavation. "The facility will include temperature-controlled therapeutic pools, accessible entry systems, and a full consultation office, all designed to help people manage pain and improve mobility. And the permits expedited through the ADA, Federal Priority Status." Marcus's smile was modest. Apparently, there's a real need for these services in the community. The Johnsons approached, drawn by the conversation. Sandra Johnson, the neighborhood's unofficial gossip coordinator, was practically vibrating with curiosity. "Marcus, honey," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "This is quite a project. Have you cleared it with the HOA?" "The HOA has no jurisdiction over ADA-protected medical facilities," Marcus replied. "Federal law supersedes local restrictions. But surely the noise is temporary and necessary for the installation of medical equipment." Marcus pulled out another folder. "I have documentation from the city confirming that all work falls within acceptable noise parameters for permitted construction." Sandra's smile faltered. "Well, I just hope you've considered the impact on property values." "Actually, medical facilities tend to increase property values," Marcus said, "especially when they're professionally designed and operated. I'm sure you'll appreciate having such a valuable community resource right in the neighborhood." Group exchanged glances. Marcus could see the wheels turning. They wanted to object, but he'd made it impossible. He wasn't just building a pool. He was starting a legitimate medical business that would help disabled individuals. Anyone who complained would look like a monster. "How long will the construction take?" Jim asked. "The excavation should be finished by tomorrow. Then we'll have concrete work, plumbing, electrical, and final installations. Total timeline is about 8 weeks. 8 weeks of this noise." Sandra's voice cracked slightly. "Oh, it gets louder," Marcus said cheerfully. "We'll have concrete trucks, electrical crews, and heavy equipment deliveries. But don't worry, everything will be finished well before the busy season starts." "Busy season?" Mr. Petrov spoke for the first time, his Russian accent thick with confusion. "Spring and summer are peak seasons for hydrotherapy treatments. I'm expecting to serve 15 to 20 patients per day once we're fully operational." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus watched as the implications sank in. Not just the construction noise, but months of ongoing traffic. Strangers in the neighborhood and the general chaos of a commercial medical facility operating in their quiet suburban enclave. 15 to 20 patients, Sandra whispered. "Per day," Marcus confirmed. "The facility will operate from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Peak hours are typically early morning and evening, when working people can access treatment." 6. In the morning, Jim's voice was strangled. Early morning therapy sessions are crucial for individuals with chronic pain. Pain levels are typically highest upon waking, so immediate treatment is essential. The excavator's engine suddenly cut off, leaving an eerie silence. In the distance, Marcus could hear birds chirping, wind chimes tinkling, and the soft hum of suburban life. It was the last moment of peace they would experience for the next 8 weeks. Tommy climbed down from the excavator and approached the group. "Boss, we hit some roots. Gonna need to bring in the stump grinder." "No problem," Marcus said. "When can you get it here?" "This afternoon." "Fair warning, though, that thing's about twice as loud as this baby." Tommy patted the excavator affectionately. "Neighbors might want to invest in some earplugs." The group of neighbors stared at Tommy like he'd announced an incoming nuclear strike. "Stump grinder?" Sandra asked faintly. "Big tree roots from the old landscaping," Tommy explained. "Gotta clear 'em out before we can pour the foundation. Should only take a few hours." "A few hours of what, exactly?" Jim asked. Tommy grinned. "Ever heard a wood chipper having a fight with a diesel engine? It's something like that, but louder." As the neighbors dispersed, Marcus noticed Karen watching from her upstairs window. She'd changed into her full armored business suit, perfect, makeup, and an expression that suggested she was planning something. His phone buzzed with a text from David Patterson. City inspector will be there at 2 p.m. Everything's approved and ready to go. Karen called my office 3 times this morning, asking The pink flamingo floatie appeared on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks into construction, bobbing obscenely in the muddy water that had collected at the bottom of Marcus's excavation site. Marcus stared at it from his kitchen window, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. The flamingo was pristine, clearly brand new, its ridiculous grin seeming to mock him from the construction crater. Around its neck hung a laminated note that he could see even from a distance. "Daddy, there's a birdie in our pool." Sophia pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. "It's pink." Marcus's jaw clenched. Karen had just crossed. Another line. "Stay inside, Mia," he said, grabbing his jacket. "I'll be right back." The note, when he retrieved it, was written in Karen's distinctive handwriting on HOA letterhead. "Looking forward to my first therapy session. I've heard water aerobics is wonderful for stress relief. See you at 6 a.m. sharp. Your new patient." Karen. Marcus crushed the note in his fist. The implication was clear. He was running a legitimate medical business. He couldn't discriminate against patients, and Karen, with her perfect health and vindictive smile, was going to force him to either admit his pool was fake or actually treat her. It was brilliant. It was evil. It was exactly what he should have expected. His phone buzzed. A text from AN, unknown number. "Hope you're ready for your first customer. I've been having terrible back pain lately. Might need daily sessions." K. Marcus typed back. "All patients require physician referral and medical evaluation. Looking forward to reviewing your disability documentation." The response came immediately. "See you soon." XO Marcus looked at the flamingo, then at Karen's house. Through her kitchen window, he could see her silhouette, clearly watching his reaction. She raised a coffee mug in a mock toast. 2 could play this game. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed Tommy. "How quickly can you get the concrete trucks?" "Here. Thought you weren't ready for concrete yet. We still got electrical and plumbing rough-in. Change of plans. I want to pour the deck today. All of it. That's going to be loud as hell, boss, and expensive. Bill me within 2 hours." The first concrete truck rumbled down Willow Creek Lane like a mechanical dinosaur. The cylindrical mixer drum rotated slowly, its hydraulic systems hissing and groaning. Behind it came another truck, then another. Marcus had ordered enough concrete to pour the entire pool deck, spa area, and accessibility platforms in one continuous operation. It would take 12 hours of non-stop work, with trucks arriving every 30 minutes from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The noise was apocalyptic. The first truck backed into his driveway with its backup alarm beeping incessantly. The hydraulic pump that pushed concrete through the delivery hose sounded like a mechanical heartbeat amplified through stadium speakers. The concrete itself made a wet, churning sound as it flowed into the forms, punctuated by the constant rumble of mixers and the shouts of the work crew. By noon, every house on the street had at least one person standing outside, staring at the industrial symphony taking place in Marcus's backyard. The Hendersons had given up trying to work from home and retreated to a coffee shop. The Johnsons were pacing their front yard like caged animals. Mr. Petrov had simply left, driving away with a look of profound betrayal. And Karen was standing in her driveway, arms crossed, face twisted with rage, watching her peaceful neighborhood transform into a construction zone. Marcus waved at her cheerfully from his porch. At 2 p.m., the city inspector arrived for his scheduled compliance check. Marcus met him at the gate, hard hat in hand, looking every inch the professional medical facility developer. "Dr. Martinez," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Inspector Martinez was a thin, serious man who took his job very seriously. He studied the construction site with the intensity of a surgeon examining a patient. "Impressive operation," he said, raising his voice over the concrete pumps. "Very professional setup." "We don't cut corners when it comes to patient safety," Marcus replied. "Every aspect of this facility exceeds ADA requirements." They walked the site together, Marcus pointing out the accessibility features he'd incorporated into the design. Wheelchair-accessible ramps, slip-resistant surfaces, emergency communication systems, and therapeutic equipment mounting points. It wasn't just a pool, it was a legitimate medical facility that happened to involve water. I have to say, Dr. Martinez shouted over the noise, "This is one of the most thorough ADA compliance installations I've seen. Whoever designed this really knew what they were doing." "I consulted with specialists at the Spinal Injury Center," Marcus said. "Wanted to make sure we could serve patients with a wide range of mobility issues." Dr. Martinez made notes on his clipboard, checking boxes and nodding approvingly. Full compliance. In fact, this exceeds federal requirements in several areas. As they talked, Marcus noticed a familiar figure approaching from across the street. Karen had changed into her full power suit, the outfit she wore when she meant business. Behind her walked Richard Blackwood, the HOA lawyer, looking considerably less confident than he had during their last encounter. "Inspector Martinez," Karen called out, her voice cutting through the construction noise. "I need to speak with you about this illegal construction." Dr. Martinez turned, his expression neutral but professional. "Ma'am, I'm conducting a scheduled compliance inspection. Are you a licensed contractor or municipal official?" "I'm the president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. This construction violates multiple neighborhood covenants." "I'm afraid HOA covenants don't apply to ADA-compliant medical facilities," Dr. Martinez replied. "Federal law supersedes local restrictions." Blackwood stepped forward. "Inspector, we have documentation that this is not a legitimate medical facility. This is a residential swimming pool masquerading as a commercial business." Dr. Martinez looked at Marcus. "Do you have your licensing documentation?" Marcus handed over his certification folder. "Licensed hydrotherapy consultant, registered with the state medical board, business license, federal tax ID, liability insurance, and ADA compliance certification." Dr. Martinez reviewed the documents carefully. Everything appears to be in order. Mr. Rivera is operating a legitimate medical therapy business, but he's not actually treating patients. Karen's voice was rising to near hysteria levels. "This is all fake." "Ma'am, whether or not Mr. Rivera has patients is not a compliance issue," Dr. Martinez said patiently. "My job is to ensure the facility meets federal standards for accessibility and safety, which it does." "This is harassment," Karen shrieked. "He's doing this to torture the neighborhood." Dr. Martinez looked around at the construction site, then at Karen's increasingly unhinged expression. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. You're interfering with an official inspection." Marcus watched Karen's face cycle through rage, desperation, and calculation. She was a woman who'd spent her entire adult life getting her way through manipulation and intimidation. Being completely powerless was breaking something inside her. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I'll find a way to stop this." As Karen and her lawyer retreated, Dr. Martinez shook his head. "Some people just can't accept progress. This facility is going to help a lot of people." "That's the plan," Marcus said. After the inspector left, Marcus stood in his backyard, watching the concrete work continue. The pool was taking shape, not just a swimming pool, but something larger and more complex. Therapeutic pools with adjustable depths, accessibility ramps, equipment mounting points, and a spa area designed for rehabilitation exercises. It was everything he'd promised. A legitimate medical facility that would actually help people with mobility issues and chronic pain. The fact that it would also give him his pool back, provide Sophia with a place to swim, and drive Karen Mitchell to the brink of insanity was just a bonus. His phone rang. David Patterson. "Marcus, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Karen Mitchell just filed a complaint with Child Services. She's claiming that the construction noise and industrial activity make your home an unsafe environment." For Sophia, Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. She can't do that. She can, and she did. They're sending someone out tomorrow for a welfare check. The construction is completely legal. "I know, but Marcus, they're not going to care about permits when they see your backyard looking like an industrial site. And if they decide the living situation is unstable, ... Marcus closed his eyes. He'd been so focused on his war with Karen, he'd forgotten she could still attack him where it hurt most. "What do I do?" "Clean up everything you can. Make the house look as normal as possible. And Marcus, you might want to think about whether winning this fight is worth risking Sophia." As Marcus hung up, he realized Karen had just played her trump card. She couldn't stop his construction, couldn't challenge his permits, couldn't legally force him to quit, but she could threaten the one thing that mattered more than revenge, his daughter. Marcus looked at the construction site, then at Karen's house. Through her window, he could see her on the phone, probably making more calls, filing more complaints, escalating to whatever government agency might listen. For the first time since this war began, Marcus felt something approaching fear. Sophia was inside doing homework, safe and happy, excited about. The child services investigator arrived at 9 a.m. sharp on Friday morning, stepping out of a government sedan into what looked like a disaster zone. 3 concrete trucks were queued in the street, workers in hard hats swarmed the backyard, and the air thrummed with the constant rumble of industrial machinery. Marcus met her at the front door, Sophia's hand firmly in his. He'd kept his daughter home from school, knowing that Karen would try to use her absence as more ammunition. "Ms. Chen," Marcus said, extending his hand to the thin Asian woman with the clipboard. "Thank you for coming. I understand there's been a complaint about Sophia's living conditions." Ms. Chen looked around the construction chaos with professional detachment. "Mr. Rivera, I'm here to assess whether this environment is safe for a child. These are some serious allegations." "What allegations specifically?" Ms. Chen consulted her notes. "Unsafe construction practices, industrial noise levels exceeding residential limits, exposure to hazardous materials, and general environmental instability." "All of which are completely false," Marcus said calmly. "Would you like to see the safety documentation?" For the next hour, Marcus walked Ms. Chen through every aspect of the construction site. Safety barriers properly installed, workers wearing required protective equipment, all materials stored according to OSHA guidelines. He showed her the noise level measurements loud, but within legal limits for permitted construction. He produced certificates for every piece of equipment, licenses for every worker, and compliance documentation for every phase of the project. This is remarkably thorough. Most residential construction sites don't have this level of safety protocols. "This isn't just residential construction," Marcus explained. "This is a medical facility. Federal safety standards apply." Ms. Chen interviewed Sophia next, asking gentle questions about her living situation. Sophia, coached by Marcus but naturally honest, described their daily routine, her school performance, and her excitement about the new pool. "The loud machines don't scare you?" Ms. Chen asked. "Sometimes they're really noisy," Sophia admitted. "But Daddy explained that they're building something to help people who hurt. Like how the doctors helped Mama when she was sick." Ms. Chen made notes, her expression softening. "And how do you feel about living here?" "I love it. Daddy takes good care of me, and when the pool is done, I can swim again." Mama loved swimming. After the interview, Ms. Chen toured the house itself. Clean, organized, well-stocked with food, and appropriate furnishings. Sophia's room was a perfect example of a well-cared-for child's space homework displayed on a bulletin board. Art supplies neatly organized, books everywhere. "Mr. Rivera," Ms. Chen said as they concluded the inspection, "I have to ask, do you know who filed this complaint? I have my suspicions, because the allegations don't match what I'm seeing here. This appears to be a stable, loving home with a responsible parent conducting legitimate, permitted construction. Some neighbors aren't happy about the noise." Ms. Chen looked out the window toward Karen's house, where a figure could be seen watching from behind curtains. "Noise complaints usually go to the city, not child services. This feels more ... personal." As Ms. Chen prepared to leave, Marcus made a decision that would either end this war or escalate it beyond anything he'd imagined. "Ms. Chen, before you go, I'd like to show you something." He led her to his home office and opened a filing cabinet filled with 2 years of documentation. Police reports from Karen's harassment calls, HOA violation notices filed maliciously, records of her attempts to have his contractor's license revoked, emails she'd sent to other neighbors spreading lies about Elena's illness. "This is a pattern of systematic harassment," Marcus said quietly. "Mrs. Mitchell has been targeting my family since the day we moved in. When my wife was dying of cancer, this woman told neighbors that sick people brought down property values. When I tried to be a good neighbor and remove my pool voluntarily, she manipulated HOA rules to force me into it anyway. And now she's using child services as a weapon." Ms. Chen studied the documents, her professional calm cracking slightly. "This is extensive. I started documenting everything after the first few incidents. 2 years of harassment, threats, and intimidation. All because Karen Mitchell decided she didn't want us in her neighborhood." Ms. Chen closed the file. "Mr. Rivera, I want you to know that this complaint will be marked as unfounded. Your daughter is clearly well cared for, and this appears to be a misuse of the child welfare system. What happens to someone who files false reports? There can be consequences, particularly when it appears to be part of a harassment pattern." Ms. Chen's voice carried a note of steel. "We take abuse of the system very seriously." After Ms. Chen left, Marcus stood in his front yard watching Karen's house. She'd be expecting him to surrender now, to shut down construction rather than risk another investigation. She'd used his love for Sophia against him, confident that fear would succeed where legal challenges had failed. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Marcus pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first was to Tommy. "I want round-the-clock construction, 3 shifts, continuous work. We're finishing this facility in 2 weeks instead of 8. That's going to cost, I don't care what it costs. I want concrete trucks at 6 a.m. and work crews until midnight, every single day." The second call was to David Patterson. "I want to file a harassment lawsuit against Karen Mitchell. Everything. 2 years of documentation, malicious use of government agencies, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "Marcus, are you sure about this?" "Dead sure. And David, I want to hold a press conference." The third call was to Agent Sarah Chen at the Justice Department. "Agent Chen, this is Marcus Rivera. Remember my ADA compliance case? We have a problem. A neighbor is using child services to harass a disabled individual operating a federally protected medical facility." That afternoon, Marcus stood on his front lawn, surrounded by reporters from 3 local news stations, 2 newspapers, and a disability rights blogger who'd driven down from the city. Behind him, the construction site hummed with activity as workers poured the final sections of his therapeutic facility. "My name is Marcus Rivera," he began, looking directly into the cameras. "2 years ago, I moved to this neighborhood seeking a quiet place to raise my daughter after my wife died of cancer. Instead, I found systematic harassment from a neighbor who decided my family didn't belong here." He told the story methodically, presenting documentation, playing recordings of threatening voicemails, showing photos of vandalism. The reporters scribbled notes furiously as he described Karen's escalating campaign of intimidation. "When I started a legitimate medical business to help disabled individuals, people like me who suffer from chronic pain, this same neighbor tried to use child services as a weapon against my family. She filed false reports claiming my daughter was in danger, hoping to force me to abandon a federally protected medical facility." The lead reporter from Channel 7 raised her hand. "Mr. Rivera, what's your response to claims that this is really just an elaborate swimming pool?" Marcus gestured toward the construction site. "This facility exceeds all federal requirements for therapeutic hydrotherapy centers. We have adjustable depth pools for different mobility levels, accessibility, equipment for wheelchair users, and safety systems designed for medical treatment. Yes, it includes a pool because hydrotherapy requires water. But it's specifically designed to help people manage chronic pain and improve mobility." "And your neighbor's objections. Karen Mitchell has made it clear that she doesn't want disabled people in her neighborhood. She's opposed to a medical facility that would help people like me because she believes it lowers property values. That's not just harassment, it's disability discrimination." The story hit the evening news with devastating effect. Marcus watched from his living room as reporters ambushed Karen outside her house, asking pointed questions about her harassment campaign. She tried to maintain her composure, but her mask slipped quickly under professional scrutiny. "I'm simply trying to protect our neighborhood's character," she said, her voice strained. "This is a residential area, not a commercial district. But you support the ADA rights of disabled individuals," the reporter pressed. "Of course, and you agree that people with disabilities deserve access to medical treatment?" "Yes, however. So your objection is specifically to having disabled people receive treatment in your neighborhood." Karen's face went white as she realized the trap. "That's not what I said. Then what exactly is your objection to a federally licensed medical facility helping disabled individuals? The interview ended with Karen fleeing into her house, refusing to answer questions, while the reporter delivered a damning summary directly to camera. By Sunday morning, the story had gone viral on social media. #Poolcrin was trending on Twitter, with thousands of people sharing Marcus's story and condemning Karen's harassment. Disability rights groups were calling for investigations. The HOA's phone was ringing constantly with complaints. But the real victory came Monday morning. Marcus was reviewing patient intake forms in his office when he heard a commotion outside. Through his window, he saw a moving truck backing into Karen's.